I want to welcome everybody to a special meeting of the Strategic Planning Committee. The meeting tonight will be discussing the parish drainage ordinance, and everyone's present. Councilman Hillingsbeck is coming late, but he's not here right now. And with that, we'd like to have a prayer by Councilman McConnell.
Father in heaven, we're praying tonight for the families and for the victims of violence in the Amish community of Pennsylvania. Please, Father, look over the families of those victims, comfort them in their time of sorrow and tragedy, and please, Father, help us to figure out why these things happen so that we can prevent them from ever happening again. We pray for our soldiers, our brothers and sisters in uniform who are protecting us. If they're here or they're in faraway lands, we ask that you put your hand on their shoulder and protect them and bring them home safely to their families. We pray for ourselves, Father, because we ask you for the wisdom, the guidance that we need to make the decisions that are in the best interest of your people, the best interest of the people in the community of Ascension Parish. Please help us, Lord, as we struggle with the difficulties, but we know that with your help and guidance we will make the right decisions. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, in a public comment period, anyone wishing to sign up, just give Ms. Suzanne a card, and we will recognize people because this is a committee that we're looking to try to adjust things as we go. We will recognize you on individual items. What we want to do today is that the special meeting was called to discuss the proposed Ascension Parish drainage ordinance and any changes, and finalize it to present the recommendations of this board to the full council on Thursday. And what I'd plan to do, the method we'll do this is that anyone that has any particular concerns, we will name these concerns first, write them down, and then start from A and continue until we finish with all concerns that we have. In your packet at your table that you have is the completed and adjusted ordinance, and it has all of the changes that have been made since the first one was done. It's underlined, and it also has the definitions that goes with the drainage ordinance. That's an addendum to the regular PUD ordinance or anything else that we do have. So that's all attached. We have some of the things that was called in that we put on the agenda here is upstream and downstream effects of development, or development effects upstream and downstream. So we will start with that one, and then the next one is fill on the house pads, number of permits that are required, attaching traffic, well, and then we're going to skip traffic because this is a drainage order. Drainage studies to the plat and subdivisions.
Is that E?
That's E. And then we will open it up to any others that we have. Any councilman has any other items that they would like to look at?
Ken, on 12D, but if we move on one of the C, fill under the house pads, it might take care of that one.
Okay, well, let's put it down.
Okay, because it says 12D says all drainage impact studies, construction plans, and final drainage calculations submitted to the engineering review agency shall be performed under the direction of a sealed by a qualified professional engineer. I think if you look at what we're trying to revise, we put on the back end of it, no drainage study for fill dirt on the individual home.
They also have that waivers are available on that too, so it's not necessarily one of the addendums in that. Let's put that as an item so we can just discuss it. 12D.
Did we add on to the waiver with this, or did we eliminate the waiver with?
No, the waiver is available for that.
Okay. No. That's
And we'll put it down, number F.
They didn't put it in the ordinance.
Letter F would be 12D. We'll discuss that.
Okay. Kent, the items that's on the agenda hasn't been put in this ordinance yet, right? 4A, B, C, D. None of them are in the ordinance as we
This was
speak.
all the concerns that people have
Okay, so
expressed.
none of them are implemented in the ordinance as when we got in our hand right here.
It may want to be modified.
Okay.
These are the things that people have asked to take a look at,
Okay.
and we're going to take them one at a time. Anything else? We had some. Mr. Savoy, I think you had something.
Yes, sir, but I just soon go through and let y'all go through the whole document, because you may answer some of my concerns. Or, I got mine highlighted, and got multiple questions and concerns. I don't know how you want to address them.
Well, what we were going to do is what I said is you give me the particular concerns. We were going to write them down, and we were going to start with number one and work our way through. Far as
Why don't we work the ones that's there now?
That's
and
fine.
then down the tail end, if the audience has some extra questions, we'll present them to us.
all right, Part B, upstream and downstream effects of development. And Michael, could we have you available? Explain what we have that now that addresses or does not address upstream and downstream effects of development. And by this, meaning most people are mostly meaning subdivisions, but we do have individual houses that cause upstream and downstream effects.
Okay, thank you. As far as upstream is concerned, the Section 5, Roman numeral 5, protection of watersheds and conveyance systems. Section B goes on to say that there cannot be an increase in the water surface profile through, on a stream through someone's development. That is basically the protection to the upstream property owners. In other words, if nothing is causing a rise in the water surface profile through that development, that is put there for the protection of the upstream property.
So it's already in this ordinance as it's written.
In my opinion, it's here.
Okay. What about downstream?
Downstream is the protection is there because of stormwater detention, whereas they cannot increase the peak flow rate. So if you're not increasing the peak flow rate, there should not be an impact to the downstream property owners. Now, I think the concerns that are getting raised are, frankly, is that we have a situation where there may be a lot of drainage problems. A development gets proposed upstream of that location, and then, what do you do about it? And I think that is the issue that I see being raised, and I've had some discussions with several people about it. The problem that I have is that how do you define that there's a downstream problem to the extent that you're saying, okay, there's a problem there, so we can't develop? You're going to really have to define exactly what that parameter is. Is it the fact that someone's home flooded? Is it the fact that a road overtopped? Is it the fact that a ditch got out of bank, which happens all the time? Is it the fact that 4 or 5 people got together and said there was a problem? It's very difficult to draw that line and say the difference between, oh, there's a problem there, so we can't develop. And not only that, I don't think legally that you're in a position that you can even say that someone can't develop their property. If they develop it according to this and there's not an impact to those people upstream or downstream, they should be allowed to continue to develop.
All right. And correct me if I'm wrong. The way it is written, well, understand it, what you just said, is that they have to have a profile before at the boundary of the subdivision before upstream that cannot be greater, so that
Correct.
protects all upstream. And they cannot allow the release of any more water than was previous to development downstream.
That's correct.
That's for subdivision. Now, what about right now? What do we have for commercial and for individuals?
Right now, there's no regulation for commercial development. In
And
other
nothing
words,
for individuals.
they can fill in flood zones, they can pave a 15-acre parking lot without any detention or any subsurface drainage. There's no regulation, period, in your ordinance that I'm aware of regarding commercial developments.
One of the things that I think that people will see the improvement on is that we're including commercial and residential, and that's probably where we're having a greater impact as a whole, because there is no, as we have it now, we don't have the restrictions on that as we do have control of an actual development according to law right now.
That's correct.
And that was one of my concerns, and as we, well, that would be something else, but as we go down further, that was one of my concerns because of downstream and upstream flooding. So, as you say, we already have that taken care of.
Kent.
Yes, sir.
It's taken care of, but I don't think it has enough bite in it to protect the people that's been there all their lives. Just to say the subdivision I'm experiencing right now, Seven Oaks subdivision, not my district, but I've walked it. The subdivision finally got completed. Well, it was on paper that it was going to zero impact everybody in that area. Well, guess what? It's not doing that. It's on paper, it might show it, but the actual, after everything is finished, you could run into a problem. We have drainage issues at a certain location. We should be able to address them as DPW, saying that, well, yes, we do have drainage issues here, major drainage issues. I don't know, maybe legal can, O'Neill, you can help me on this as far as what can we do to put more bite on downstream. I see what Michael's talking about, but as a board, as a drainage board, to protect the people, we have nothing on the books, and that's what my main objective on this ordinance was, to put some bite in that, to protect the people, and we're not doing that from what I see.
Well, I think that I can't tell you engineering-wise how to do it, but I agree with Michael. In fact, I've told him that before, that if I've got a piece of property that you've zoned a certain way, and I'm doing everything you told me I got to do, and the drainage problem is another drainage problem, then basically what you're doing is telling me I can't now.
But
if you want to put a time frame on it or something like that before they can do something, that's a possibility, so that the parish, if there's a parish problem, they can resolve it. But if they cannot resolve that problem,
But that's as of right now, we don't have anything. That's why we're trying to change this ordinance, to have some bite in it, to do something
But
with it.
right now, our ordinance does not have that. This ordinance does have it.
It's still showing a zero impact. Michael, just finished
Yeah.
saying, if it's a zero impact, there again, it's on paper. Zero impact is on paper. Not necessarily it's going to work, Kent.
Well,
It's proven fact throughout the parish. We just built a new subdivision off of right behind Supreme Chevrolet that's flooding some homes. New subdivision just got put in there. Well, guess what? It's impacting the people because their houses got flooded because of this subdivision. It went through planning. It went through zero impact. But what happened to it? I don't know. So it's on paper. Just because it's on paper don't mean it's going to work. One in my district right now is so borderline that the people are going to flood. Any kind of impact is going to affect them. Downstream or upstream, both. From the west side coming from upstream and then the south side downstream. It's going to affect them just a little bit of impact. So, this didn't have no more bite than what we started off with, as far as I'm concerned, on downstream and upstream flooding. And that's my objective, is to put something in it.
how do we?
And that's why I'm asking legal. And Michael knows I've been trying to work on this
Are
also.
we protecting people? And is there another way of protecting people more?
I can tell you this. There's nothing in the drainage ordinance today that has any mention about keeping the water surface profile the same to protect the upstream. There's nothing in the drainage ordinance today that says you have to detain water. It simply says to design to DOTD hydraulics manual, which is a manual that was written to tell people how to drain highways and not how to control the stormwater from developments. There's nothing in the ordinance today. Everything that we are doing as engineering review agency is a matter of policy. It's just things. These are things that we are currently enforcing of everyone that is designing subdivisions, and we're doing it without the benefit of an ordinance in place. So, if you're going to compare to what we have, what your ordinance is today, you have none of these protections in place. Absolutely none. Is it
To answer the question, why is there flooding problems after the development than it was before?
I can't. Seven Oaks was done several years ago. I haven't.
Well, the second one I talked about was new. It's brand new.
That's the first that I've heard of it. I'll be happy to look into it and see what the issue or the problem is. You can put whatever you want on, and I agree with you. You can put whatever you want on paper. You can say it's going to work. But that's the job of the consultants that are designing. It's our job as review agents to make sure that that the design is reasonable.
Do we have something in place now that if they do approve something in the subdivision and it comes and they're having problems downstream, is there something that we have feedback so that Michael can take a look at it and find out what went wrong?
No. Once we give like Michael said, once you give the approval to a subdivision to build as per a certain standard, and they complete as per that standard, basically they did everything was asked of them. So we can't come back after the point, a month or 2 months or 3 months later, and there is an impact. We don't have anything in the ordinance.
That's not what I'm saying. Let's just say they do everything they're supposed to, and we've approved it, or we've directed them to do X amount, and they've done that. And then we see after it's completed that they have a problem downstream, and water is getting to where it didn't get before. Can DPW do something to get back so that we can find out what's going on? Obviously something in the process happened that caused people to have more water than they did before, and we can, after a period of time, we can solve that problem. It might be a problem in the process, it might be a problem in how we figured things or whatever. But I know the area that Councilman Lambert is talking about, and it was an increase in problem. We may have just shifted the water somewhere. If we did, we need to take a look at that. But we need some type of follow-up, especially so that people know that if we have a problem, there's a follow-up, and we can see that there's a method of fixing it.
Anytime we have a problem, especially a problem that we didn't see before in prior years, and all of a sudden now we've seen it, we do that. We go back and through our consultants and in-house engineering, go back and look at the development that occurred recently that may have caused it. We looked at other factors, but this is a complicated issue when you get into hydrology and hydraulics, especially hydrology of these subdivisions. So, and they use figures, and they use a procedure of certain analysis to figure it out, and it's all, you can make numbers move around just about any way you want to, but they use the best method possible to analyze it, and that's about all we can do. But we do go back, but there's nothing we can do except say go back in and fix a problem or enlarge a channel or do something like that to let the water go through and alleviate the problem. But yeah, we are looking at it, but we haven't really found anything where a subdivision really caused a problem. Yeah. The new subdivisions that came online the last year or so, we haven't seen where they caused a problem.
And Bill, you just said it. They build a subdivision, we run into a problem, we have to go fix it. Should have been fixed before in the plans. Downstream flooding would take care of that. What we're looking at, a little bit more bite.
Well,
I've seen so many subdivisions we have to go back and put in larger ditches, larger covers throughout. The parish is funding that. That's coming out of drainage funds. Off-road, a lot of the off-road stuff, and every subdivision is costing us.
If I may, Councilman,
sure,
on that, I think the new subdivisions over the last couple of years, you're not going to find that much of a problem. It's the older ones that we have problems internally. And Seven Oaks is a prime example. We have internal problems there. But the new subdivisions with the new review procedure we have, we are eliminating a lot of those problems in the new subdivisions, the older ones that from the last 10 years all the way up to the last maybe 4 years ago that seem to cause a problem.
Michael, how long have we had the policies in place that you have now that we've been operating under?
I would say about 2 years.
About 2 years. For any subdivision that was platted
Right.
previous to, so probably a subdivision within the last year.
Right. We've been the review agency for almost 3 years. It took us probably 6 months once we got on board to really get the policies in place that we're enforcing. So, and then you've got to take that date and look at preliminary plats going forward.
And
so
construction plat.
there were several developments that were way down the line, and we had drainage impact study was already done. We were simply approving construction plans. So you'd have to go back to the specific date to
In all probability, the problem that we're having was something that was proved before we started our new policies.
That's most of what my experience has been. I'm not going to say that everything is perfect, but that's generally the experience that we're seeing is was prior.
Is there anything you can add that would, as Todd said, put more bite in upstream and downstream to try to assure that we take care of this?
I just don't know, and I know exactly what Councilman is looking for. The problem I have is how do you define a problem? When is it a problem to the point that you say, well, they can't develop upstream or they have to take additional measures? Every channel in this parish gets out of bank and floods wider than the top banks in a 10-year storm event.
In measurement, all you can measure basically is peak water flow?
We can measure peak water flow and height of water. What's the profile elevation, the water surface elevation of the existing condition, and we can make sure that doesn't get higher. But if it floods out of bank or if it floods someone's home downstream, you can't expect an upstream property owner to try to remedy that problem downstream. You can expect him to make sure he doesn't make it worse,
right?
Which is what the intent of the ordinance of what we're doing. But I just think that trying to define or put that definition of a downstream issue to define that it's a problem is going to be very, very, very difficult to do.
Ms. Goppel, you had that raise your hand?
I just have a comment, and that is that in St. Tammany Parish...
Could she approach the microphone?
Yes, please.
Thank you. In St. Tammany Parish, they have addressed this issue by requiring up to 25% negative impact, not no impact, okay? So if we're having problems with no impact, then we better consider a possible negative impact. That's a very good possibility.
Okay.
And that can be written into the document easily.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Hillenbeck.
Yeah, thank you. Ms. Goppel brings up a good point, and that is something that's been discussed in the past, that negative impact can be engineered and written into the plan. So,
well, it's a question. It's a question of whether you want to require that of all, and there's also a question, I think, O'Neill, whether that is going to uphold muster.
Well, I think the legal question is if you over-regulate property so that you are essentially taking someone's property or taking their value, it's whether you have an administrative taking of property. I'm not an engineer to tell you what that point is, but if you make it to a point where nobody can develop their property in the parish, then the parish is going to be buying a lot of property. Mm-hmm. And I don't know where that point is. I can't tell you that. That's not. But I mean, and that's the issue. That's the fine line we deal with, is where has it become economically unfeasible for anybody to develop their property, and if we reach that point, then you're doing an administrative taking of property.
And it is beginning to get challenged in St. Tammany too.
I think that this document is doing just what he said. If we pass this document in its present form, it'll be very difficult for people in Ascension Parish to develop their property. Now, that's another issue. But what we're talking about now is upstream, downstream. And I believe that this committee is going to send up to the council, I hope, an amended document which will help the people to manage the economic impact of this ordinance.
Yeah,
Now, you all realize that you can decide what this ordinance is going to be. You decide. Okay? And the public's giving input, Mr. Sanchi is giving input, but you decide. Mr. Sanchi shouldn't be deciding.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay? Thank you.
And
that's one.
yes, Mr. Hill.
Just to piggyback that, in this effort, we have to find that balance that provides for the protection of the existing homeowners and their concerns and where they're flooding, but also still allows the landowners that are wanting to sell their property or develop their property. So it's important that we find that balance, or we walk that fine line, and that it's fair to as many people as it possibly be.
One thing, we're doing a unified development code, and we have individuals in this parish that are drastically changing the upstream and downstream flow. And if we're going to ask, and when you combine all of these individuals, it has a tremendous effect. In fact, I didn't get a chance to develop them, but I rode around for about a half an hour today, and I took about 40 pictures. And it is very striking to see the individual development next to natural stream flows in this parish that are obviously causing problems. And if we're going to do a 25% decrease, then we should do that to individuals also, because they are causing a problem. It is the same amount of water. When water comes into your house, it doesn't matter if it was caused by a subdivision or two people downstream that are building houses next to the stream and building up their house pads 4 and 5 feet and causing you to flood. And that's what we're trying to address. So we have to balance what we're going to do, how far we're going to push people to protect people. In my opinion, if we keep it the way it is, if you develop something and we keep it the way it is, that's what we charge Mr. Sanji to do, to not increase it, then that is fair to everyone involved, whether you be an individual, a commercial, or a developer. And so when you shake everything out and you really go through what's the effects of things, that's really what it comes down to. And so if somebody has something that is very fair to all concerned, then we would go in that direction. I think you would be pushing things, and if we see if this ordinance as written for as upstream and downstream effects does not work in the next 2 years, we can stiffen it if we see that. I think we're increasing dramatically what we have now. We're making a big change. Right now, commercial people that come in does not have to follow any guidelines. So we're significantly increasing that. And so any other, if someone can come up with wordage that would, yes, Mr. Valentine, you had your hand up.
Before we leave this issue.
Yeah, we're not leaving it until we.
Well, the issue talking about anything built within the past 2 years, Mr. Lambert, I think was referring to Port Cogere.
Yes.
Subdivision off 621. That's a classic example of the parish, I guess, having the developer or allowing the developer to cover up a drainage ditch, and it is creating a problem upstream. I mean, it's creating a serious problem. We already had a water problem on Pyrone Road to start off with, and we allowed a subdivision to come in completely across the drainage area, and essentially, right now, I don't really know where it stands. I don't want to blindside you, Bill, but I mean, we got open drainage on the back of this property that hasn't been covered up, that got approved some kind of way. We have the covered 2 pipes that go through there that's really not sized properly. We've had to break through another gentleman's property to come through. I don't know if it still broke through. He covered it up, but But that's one that really needs to be addressed. But that's one that's kind of got through the cracks. Now, and you made a statement on commercial. I mean, commercial, they are going by subdivision roads, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, the gentleman that developed the property next to mine, the commercial development had to dig detention ponds. I mean, he was under subdivision. So let's not say commercial hadn't been following rules. They have. They've had to follow certain drainage rules that pertaining to subdivisions, and that's what they fell under. Now, I didn't say it was right, but they have been following certain rules because they've been jumping through hoops trying to have some economic development. So they've been taking up expensive property to dig ponds. Now they may have to continue to do that. I don't know what we're going to finally decide on, but that is an issue that we'll have to deal with also.
You have a
just one comment. We have done some work on one shed. Unfortunately, I guess we have to wait until the next rain event to see if it works, but we feel confident that we have to provide relief to the people that were flooded by the stream.
what was determined that was a problem that caused the problem there? Did y'all?
You had a cross drain. You had one on Palmer. You had another cross drain in the subdivision at the Lord, and also the outfall ditches coming, pipes that's coming from the detention area to the Kabash, the bayou drainage, outfall drainage, wasn't big enough to handle the flow. So we got an overflow into a parish ditch, and with the combination of the two, we feel that it's going to provide the relief. But they worked the numbers came out where what they put in would handle the flow, and hindsight showed it didn't. And we then went in there and did some work and relieved the situation. Okay. But again, their numbers show that that's all they needed to do. So, that's all they were.
So if it doesn't, how do you hold them accountable?
You can't, because we agreed to the numbers. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Once that goes into the review process, and it's all engineering, and it's not a perfect science. You take the best numbers, you go through it, and if it works, it seemed to work. That's it. And that's what we did.
Yes, Mr. McConnell.
Thank you. But that's like the first rule of engineering, right? Everything works on paper, and
we want to protect people.
And it worked on paper, but it didn't work in practicality. And now we find that we're expending parish drainage funds, and we've been meeting about this for a couple of years. Those parish drainage funds are getting stretched farther and farther because we have to do more drainage work in these existing subdivisions. We have to do more maintenance work. Now we're talking about we're going to have to go in and dig up people's fences on our right-of-way to continue doing the maintenance work on that, and that's those dollars are very limited. And now we're here. If you want to draw the distinction between major drainage and surface drainage, then those dollars are really getting stretched pretty far. And I agree with Mr. Lambert. We got to put a little bite in this to give us that enforcement authority to allow us to do that. The parish should not be in there making those repairs, or at least we shouldn't be doing it on our nickel. We should be in there, but somebody else should be paying for it, or somebody should be getting a bill, not the people of Ascension Parish.
And to reiterate what was said before, probably the only way you can do it, and with some kind of safeguard, is to go with a negative impact. You work your best numbers, and what those numbers come out to provide a zero impact, off-site impact. Then you have to you take those numbers and you increase it to 10, 15, or 20%. But then you get into a lot of other issues: private landowners, small family partitions. You get into people that want to put a house on 2 acres. Do you require them to do the same thing? Negative impact. You get into a lot of areas there that's really hard to enforce, or hard to go to the property owners and say, you're going to have to do all of this detention. If you put in a family partition, and you're going to have a lot of opposition there too. You're going to have a lot of issues. And then you get into the whole thing of restricting the person from selling or developing a piece of property because you got too many restrictions on the property, the legal issue. So either way you go, you got to answer some questions, and they're going to come back on the council. If you decide either way, it's still going to come back. We're going to have issues. So if you go with a negative impact, you've got to resolve these other issues, the family partitions and private landowners and everything else. So,
What's the wishes of the committee on this issue right here?
I still would like to see a little bit more bite. I don't know, between the legal and, like I said, this is our ordinance. We can put what we want in it, and then it's legal. We'll make it legal.
Yes, you can.
Well, you can pass it. Let's say that. You could pass it. I mean, whether it will withstand a court challenge is another issue. Zero impact is obviously easy because that's been accepted. I mean, I don't know about, I haven't done any research on negative impact. If you need me to do that, I'll gladly do that. I mean, somebody may have passed an ordinance, but whether it's withstood a challenge in court, I'm not aware of that.
Well, on that issue, of course, the engineer, Michael Sanjay, he's told us several times that we can require, what you said one time, Mike, a negative 10%. That could be engineered.
Don't we have in this ordinance right now that if DPW deems that there's a problem, that we can require a greater?
Or a negative impact versus a zero impact?
we're talking about the storm event itself, raising it to a higher event in some cases.
There's two different issues here.
Yeah,
when you're talking about generating the peak flow that comes from a development, when the lady mentioned the ordinance in St. Tammany, what they say is that if your property generates a flow of 100 cubic feet per second today undeveloped, when you develop in St. Tammany Parish, it has to be 75, not 100. It has to be reduced.
What's the effect of that?
Well, it's releasing less water. It is a negative impact. In other words, it's releasing less water. All I will say is this: I discussed this with Jones Walker, who is teamed with us on this committee to look at the ordinances about going further than zero impact. Their position was to stay away from it, and I agree with what O'Neill says. You can pass whatever you want to pass. Okay, but I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to tell you that it's going to hold up. But the point in the discussion that we had was you can certainly ask a property owner that he can't make it worse. But when you start asking him to set aside more of his land to reduce the flow to help someone downstream, does that start to constitute a taking of property? That's simply up to the parish council here to determine if they want to take that step and risk the backfire from getting challenged in court. That's a decision you can make. If it's y'all's decision to say let's go to 90% or 80% or 75%, we can put in here. It can be calculated. It can be enforced. Now let's switch gears. What Mr. Rue was talking about, the section of the ordinance that talks about an existing stream, establishing the water surface profile, and not letting it get any higher. Okay, we do have a provision that the analysis of that can be raised to a 25, 50, or 100, whatever storm event we feel is necessary, if there are significant problems in the watershed upstream. Henderson Bayou was an example of where we did that for the Keystone development. So that provision is in the ordinance as it is written today. Okay, we can, if we feel that there's problems upstream, we can require a higher storm event or it to be analyzed with a higher storm event. So you have two different issues here. One, I think we have covered because we have that provision written in. The other one, if you want, a negative.
Does that have the same effect?
Well, the only other thing you could do would be to ask them to reduce the water surface profile, which I can tell you is very, very difficult to do. You're just
but what I'm saying is if DPW recommends that you increase the drainage occurrence in that area, does that basically have the same effect of protecting people downstream?
No,
in those areas?
This has no bearing downstream.
Okay.
This is, remember,
that just holds more.
The stream analysis protects people upstream. So that's just a better way. We can go to a higher storm event to protect the people upstream. When you're talking about downstream, it's simply the detention. We're not increasing the flow rate. and that is the protection downstream.
Okay, so building bigger
Right.
detention.
So I mean,
Yes,
Michael or O'Neill, I don't know which one of y'all want to answer this. Floodplain manager. We are a floodplain manager. We have some type of regulations we can put on people in flood zone areas. Do we have anything to supersede this ordinance in a flood zone area? Can a floodplain manager? I was told once we put in a floodplain manager, which we did at the drainage board. C.J. Godin is our floodplain manager, and he can go and request, if it's in a flood zone area, make some changes. Now I don't know how.
Well,
State law. This is state law. This is.
I think that you can, and FEMA certainly recommends, different policies and procedures be made. The intent of this document is to let people know, not only the public that is trying to protect, but the engineers and developers and property owners who are trying to develop their property. The intent of the document and the ordinance is that they look at it, they read it, they understand what they have to do. You can't just start subjecting policies and changes on the spot and say, well, somebody's got a problem, so let's do this. I mean, we're trying to develop a consistent document that everyone can read, everyone knows, where it goes.
But one thing, probably all of y'all get too. People come to us, say the planning commission members, we can't do anything with it. We got our hands tied. They did what they're supposed to do, and that is the reason we're here today. To help them with a little bit more bite. And I'm tired of getting where. Well, if y'all made these changes, we can do it. Well, their hands are tied. They have to go with what's in the ordinance. So let's bite and get this ordinance where it needs to be.
I'm trying to understand, because my understanding is that this is a significant increase in what we're doing now. Am I right or wrong?
It's an increase, but it's not.
But I think the answer,
addressing all
Councilman,
issues.
is that even if you went to 75% reduction, okay, even if you went there, you're still going to have developers coming forward. Their pond's just going to get a little bit bigger, and they're going to show that they're meeting that detention. There's still going to be problems downstream. There's still going to be people upset about it, and the Planning Commission is going to be in the same posture. I don't see it, whatever ordinance you write, I think the developers, to a degree, are going to comply with it. You're still going to be back to the same issue, is, there's a problem downstream, here's some development proposed, what do we do? That issue is never going to go away. I don't care what you write or how well you write it. It's not going to go away.
The one thing on
Bill, what about the floodplain management?
Well, the floodplain management, I think the idea of floodplain management is FEMA is through the floodplain management program is suggesting things that the parish does, but to really make it legal, you need to take this stuff and put it into an ordinance form for your parish, and then require people to live up to it. So again, it's not a law there. Floodplain management is not a law that you can go and fine somebody for not doing it or restrict them. It's suggestions that FEMA has to maintain your floodplain, but you need to take those and put them into ordinances and put them into drainage programs and stuff like that to enforce it.
When are y'all going to give us recommendations in order to do that?
Well, a lot of it, some of it is in this ordinance.
Okay.
Floodplain management is, retention of water and storage areas, natural storage areas, and keeping the floodplains open and stuff like this. So, a lot of it is in this ordinance.
Okay.
Bill, what would a negative 10% do to help us? I know Michael said he's just going to go with larger ponds, but larger ponds take larger pieces of property too. So I don't know.
Well, we don't have it. We don't have a history to go by, so I'm just talking off the cuff. But if you reduce if you have a drainage channel and you have 10 developments along that drainage channel emptying into it or into that floodplain, and each one of them reduces their peak flow, then it has to be an impact on what water is coming down that stream. It seems like. One of the problems I have, though, you get into a lot of legal issues. If say, and just hypothetically, say you have one after the other, the first one reduces by 25%, only 75 peak flow coming off of it. That naturally going to reduce the next one downstream to say less than he's actually putting out right now before that one upstream, get their development. So you could do 5 or 6 on downstream. Theoretically, when you get to the one all the way downstream, you don't have to do anything because their one upstream from him reduced it so much that he has to do nothing. See what I'm saying? So, there's a lot of issues here when you start each one on reducing it by a certain amount. But it's all theoretical. We don't have anything, and no other parish that I know of really have a lot of records to go by to say if it worked or didn't work. St. Tammany is only one, and I don't have a lot of data from them on how it benefited them. So. I still got the issue, again, what I like for you to understand is the issue of family partitions and individuals when you get into this negative impact. Are you going to require only developments or only developments of a certain size or only developments and commercial developments and no family partitions or only family partitions of a certain, you got a lot of issues you got to resolve.
That was one of the things that we had talked about, and one of the reasons was that we wanted to make sure we included everyone, because a cumulative effect is what's happening in the parish. And if you include everyone being restricted, then it's very hard to go more than zero impact, because then you're getting into family petition, you're getting into single people, you're getting into commercial. And so if you want to do that, across the board, one of the things that we tried to do is make it a unified development code, which includes all development, which is important because it doesn't matter who is that. So it's just a question of how far you want to go with all. Remember, it's not just subdivisions. They can change subdivision rules and regulations by policy. Am I right, Mike?
Well, as long as
it doesn't
policy is not
inconsistent
with the drainage ordinance. That's correct.
But for the subdivision regulations or an ordinance. In fact, there's a drainage portion, but what they've done, the ERA has done is the board adopted policies to follow, and that's how he's doing some of this stuff now that was not done before.
Okay. That's what we did. That's what we did the last.
Right.
Okay.
I think Jerry had something.
Mr. Savoy.
Yeah. Has there been any discussion in regards to negative versus the 25-year storm event?
Yes.
There's been some discussion on that?
And as he explained, that's a different animal. That they're two separate things in development.
Okay.
Yeah, on that, let's be clear. We believe that we should stay with the 10-year event and have the option of DPW reviewing it and upping it, because we have to look at the whole situation, because we don't want to raise the roads or do something that would impact that subdivision if in fact it doesn't need to be a 25.
Right.
So that's good. We agree with that. We say leave that alone the way it is.
Any suggestions? Any proposal to any changes? And this is right back when we've been having these discussions for years now. And
we're saying that our hands are tied legal. Legal saying, this is Michael saying as much as we can put in this ordinance without getting challenged in court.
What I'm saying, Todd, is under the Louisiana Civil Code, what it says whenever you deal with, let's say, a dominant estate and a serving estate, it says that as far as water, if I drain on you, I got the right to drain on you, and and the person below me has to accept it, and he has to accept it, and I can't make it any worse than it is, and that's what zero impact actually is. It's saying I can't make it any worse, and when it leaves my property, I can't make it any worse on the next guy, and that's essentially what the Civil Code says. Now,
so on a development, the liability goes to the developer.
Absolutely.
And engineering, whoever said that it would be a zero impact.
It's actually private rights of action, not parish.
So the homeowners have got triple lawsuit against maybe two or three.
Then they should file suit. Any? Okay, we will keep the wordage for upstream and downstream development as is, and we're running out of time. Do you wish to adjourn until after the drainage board? Because we need to.
Depending on the time of the drainage board.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I think we have a pretty substantial drainage board agenda tonight, and I don't know. It seems to me this is a matter that needs its own attention and not piggybacked onto another meeting night. And I'd like to see us
Monday
devote it. Yeah, why not? Why not Monday night?
Next Monday. Do we have a conflict, Suzanne?
I don't think so.
That's October the 9th.
Michael, you have conflict?
Had it all.
We just meet all day. We will find out. Well, we need. I want to set the meeting so everyone knows. And the reason we're waiting, we want to make sure that we have our engineer available. No use to set a meeting if we have the person that has written it not here.
That's fine. You're talking about next Monday,
Yes.
October 9th? Right. That's fine.
Yes.
You're all right with that? 6 o'clock?
6 p.m. next Monday, 9th, we will address the other issues. And besides the one we have now, Ms. Suzanne, attaching drainage studies to the plats and subdivision, we want to see where what that was a request. Also discuss public and private buildings and developments. Decide whether we want to include public and private. We needed to do that. Anything else, you need to please phone us. With that, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Councilman Matari. We are now adjourned.